provide help inviting industry leaders, and in the end, to show the latest updates of our product that is built to transform the real estate transaction process. Today, we'll be revealing the methods to attract and retain top real estate agents even during the pandemic. Mark Johnson, CEO of JP and Associates, is our guest today. We'll discuss tips for real estate agents to stay ahead of the curve in 2021, methods to attract and retain top real estate agents, and how to grow your business without paying for leads from Zillow. Mark, excited to have you here. Also, my co-host, Joe Bedelli, our CRO at Proppy.
Welcome. And thank you, Mark, for joining.
We got the nutcracker. I love it. Well, it is that time of year.
Yes.
One of our agents just posted a picture of her front door, and she had the biggest two nutcrackers that I've ever seen as they enter into her house. It was pretty epic.
Joe's nutcrackers are a consistent sticking point on our daily Zoom calls. He's very proud of them. So,
William, I have a 5-foot one I haven't brought out yet.
Okay, that's next week.
Yes.
Well, I'll never live it down. When I was in Orange County, I brought my sons to it was a takeoff of the nutcracker. It was like this adapted version, and it was awful. And they never let me down. Whenever a nutcracker comes up, I'm the family joke. So we've gone to the traditional nutcracker ever since.
Very nice.
So what's our agenda today? We're going to talk about talent attraction and retention and those kind of things.
Yes, which I know that's your focus. So before we dive into that, would just love for you to share a little bit of info on your background and how you got started in real estate.
Well, like most of us, 95% of us get into real estate as a second career. And I graduated from college with my bachelor's degree and went on to get my master's degree. But I went through the Army ROTC program. So I spent some time on active duty in the United States Army. I served in Fort Sam Houston and San Antonio, Texas, and Fort Knox, and a number of other posts here in the United States. And I'm forever grateful for that service to our country. I went on to spend a number of years in consumer packaged goods in sales and marketing, and was relocated to California. And the firm was bought and sold out, and I had two choices: stay in Southern California or relocate back to Minneapolis. I chose to stay in Southern California, and I started my real estate career and nearly became Rookie of the Year that year.
Congratulations, and thank you for your service.
Yeah, you're welcome. So that's a little bit about me. I'm a father of 3. I'm a lifelong learner. I do crazy things like Spartan races and adventure athletics. I really do that for a purpose. It always gives me a goal to be striving towards. And I'm one of those that translates things outside of business to business. And so I went over to Africa to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. That was an amazing mission trip that supported training and leadership for people in need there and things like that.
Very neat. Like most of our guests, you got into real estate by accident. It seems to be a common theme.
Yeah, it is a second career. I mean, literally, the research shows it's 95% of it. It is a second career, and it's really designed for that. And those of us that are very successful with it have found a niche.
So in your current role at JPAR, you focus a lot on expansion. So diving right into the topic of the webinar, how do you attract and retain top agents?
Simple. Solve problems for a profit. We solve problems for a profit. And that goes whether you're a CEO of a real estate firm or an office manager or a regional manager or a real estate agent or a team leader. We solve our agents, in this case, our agents' problems, and our agents solve the consumer's problems. Let me give you an example. One of the two biggest challenges that real estate professionals face is hiring their first assistant. It's step number 3 in one of the 7 steps that we look at. And when they get to step 3, hiring their staff, they get paralyzed, they get stuck. Well, we just completed and rolled out the definitive guide to hiring your first assistant, both in video and the step-by-step written guide. that help solve that problem for folks. That becomes very attractive for people. We did a very similar thing with our release of the CEO Team Leader Manual, which has the 6 steps that every team lead needs to take to be successful. So to basically tie it up in a nutshell, no pun intended, or a nutcracker, solve problems for a profit. And when you become known as a problem solver, people become naturally attracted and want to be part of your solution. And so our approach is, how can we wake up every day? What challenges do we need to help our associates fix? What challenges do we need to make it quicker, faster, better, more efficient, less stress-free, either for us or for the consumer?
Gotcha. Now that's sort of unique, because hiring an assistant is something that you wouldn't intuitively think of, but as you are aware, that can make a huge difference in terms of your productivity and efficiency. So to me, that's something I've never heard from any of the other broker owners that we have interviewed and stuff, but it makes a lot of sense.
Well, think about it. We've done some studies, and in many cases, your production will double. You'll double your production when you hire your first assistant. But most of us get scared because guess what? Well, wait a minute. I'm going to have payroll. I'm going to have obligations. What if I don't sell anything and I still have to pay the payroll, right? And so it's easy for us to get stuck between the 6 inches between our ears, right? So what we've done is helped make a very practical step-by-step guide, the pros, the cons, the to-dos and the don'ts of how to get that done. And it's been wildly successful for us.
Mark, on the 6 steps, what are the ones most people have the hardest problem with? What's the toughest one?
In terms of teams?
Yes.
On teams, it's not clearly having a clear value proposition, right? It's not having a clear value proposition. So many times I get calls from team leaders who want to create a team, and I'll ask them, well, why? And some of them will say, well, so we can be in a higher award status. Well, that didn't make sense, right? Or some of them say, oh, so we can, earn a higher commission or do something with commissions. They're not thinking through. I know they're going to be a successful team when they come to me because I can deliver a better service to the consumer. I can handle more leads. They approach it from a different angle, right? So one of the mistakes is not being clear on why you're starting a team and the purpose of the team. The other mistakes is not being clear on what the team member is going to pay in compensation and what they're going to get from you in return. So one of the biggest disputes that we work with between team members and team leads is, well, I don't get any value for the split I pay the team leader. And so they have constant turnover. And the team leader calls me and says, well, Mark, how come I'm having all these team members come and go out of my team? Well, we need to look at the value you're providing. And in most cases, what we find is there's no value. And if there's no value, people are going to leave.
I like to say incentives drive behavior.
Well, not only incentives drive behavior, but also value. So we have 150 or more teams within the brokerage. And we have some teams that I would call it as the coaching model. And that the primary value of the team leader is as the coach. We have others that the primary value is leads. Both very successful. One of my top 2 teams has 2 totally different models and 2 totally different approaches, but they're both wildly successful. But there's one thing they're very clear on is what's the value they provide to their team. One provides leads and has an amazing way to provide leads, track them, measure them, hold them accountable, convert them. Another one doesn't provide any leads. All she provides is coaching, mentoring, training, nourishment, and she's just as successful, but provides tremendous value.
Now, is in a leadership position, would you encourage the 2 groups to look at what the other is doing and perhaps generate even more efficiency, or are you a little more hands-off and sort of it's working and you have your method, even though it's different, and let them do their thing?
It depends. See, one size doesn't fit all, right? And not every approach works for every team. So in this case, these 2 particular individuals I'm thinking about, we've had that discussion. And the coaching model team leader really doesn't have a desire to doesn't have a goal and is growing exponentially enough with her model that she's not interested in the other model, and the same with the other person. But there are others that I've talked to that could build that into their team and have the desire to do that. So it's unique to each person's goal, what they're trying to accomplish, how big they want it to be, those type of things.
Gotcha. Now, going back to one of the initial questions that we had, how do you bring in leads without utilizing Zillow and paying for them?
Oh, that's a loaded question. Well, we do. Well, so I'm not even sure why that question came up, but is the question, how do you generate leads at low cost?
Yes.
As an agent or as a brokerage?
As a brokerage from your seat.
Yeah, well, that would be very, very difficult. Obviously, there's the websites and those kind of things. What we've seen great success from our agent population, quite frankly, during COVID, is virtual home walkthroughs. Instead of a physical open house, in a sense, they're doing a virtual, kind of like we're doing today, as they're walking through the home, narrating the home. And if they don't have a listing, they're doing it for a local builder or another JPAR associate who has a listing. And we've seen that generate a very strong lead flow. Virtually, the only cost is their time and energy to get it done, and a little bit for the boost, right? So we're a big proponent of OpCity. I believe in the state of Texas, we're the #1 partner with OpCity. Those leads do have some cost and come through realtor.com. OpCity scrubs them, those kind of things. But that has some upfront cost and obviously referral fees.
Mark, you have over 3,200 agents, I think, in 20 plus states. From a growth standpoint, how do you determine which states to go to, and what's happening next for JPAR as far as its expansion?
Well, so first you have to understand how we're organized. We're obviously a holding company that's owned by Vesuvius Holdings, and JP Piccinini is the founder and the chairman of the holding company. Then Jeff Lewis operates the franchise organization, and I lead our company-owned stores here in Texas. So at the moment, Jeff and I have a little contest. The brokerage has the most number of agents. We're about 2,400 agents. But Jeff is rapidly, and I think this is the first month he's beat me in the total recruiting number, where the franchise has beat us in our total recruits. So Jeff is leading that effort, and we're being approached by folks that are looking for alternatives and something innovative in all 50 states. And Jeff and his team are prepared to talk to anybody that would like to talk about that. Just head over to our website, jpar.com, and click on franchising, and you'll get connected with Jeff and some of his sales professionals on that side. In terms of Texas, where we're company owned, not in all markets. Houston, we have our largest franchise in Houston, and a couple others in the state, but primarily our company owned stores here. And I look at expansion, where we have big producers that want to come over to our firm and that type of thing.
Now, going back to the value, being able to attract that many agents and retain them, what's the value proposition that the agents see when they're looking at?
Several. And we ask them every time they join. We're big into surveys. We're big into feedback, and we are agent centric. And we take the surveys and we do something unique. We listen to them, and where it makes sense, you see, we're aligned with the agents. We have two values: productivity and service. And we're all around productivity. And so we have a philosophy that agents will be attracted and stay where they get more value than what they pay. Think of you and I as consumers. When you get more value than you pay, how do you feel? Pretty good, right?
You would think that's a no-brainer question, but there are agents that are joining you or leaving from somewhere else. So can you give an example of where they're not seeing value or where there as an agent feels there's value?
Yeah, in a lot of cases. So some of it could be in training and mentoring, right? And we have very strong, maybe even world-class training and mentoring programs throughout our network. We're offering 100 different training classes every month for in all 5 stages of development, whether you're a new agent, a growth agent, a team, someone that's fallen off the horse or total restructuring mode. We have a learning track for you. So it could be training and mentoring. It could be our very competitive fee structure. But in almost all of my surveys, fees is not the first thing they mention. They mention training and mentoring. They mention supportive leadership. They mention responsive broker support. If you're one of our agents and you need to reach out to a broker, in some cases, you'll hear from a broker in 15 minutes or less. On average, we average about an hour and 40 minutes, the longest that you would wait to get a hold of an expert if you're in a transactional issue. So broker support is mentioned frequently. So, there's a number of things. We're very innovative. We have 100% agent paid for health benefit plan that they can participate in. We just have a number of innovations like that get people's interests.
Now, Mark, I was reading one of your blogs the other day, and you said something that was interesting, where it's focus on a specialty. So whether that's first-time buyers, condos, a specific geography, can you speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah, it's amazing. Matter of fact, I just had Michael Lafido, who's one of our trainers, who's one of the nation's leading luxury real estate specialists out of Chicago, was on our morning show this morning talking about this very topic. What we find is when people specialize, they're wealthy, right? When they're generalists, they can make some money. And so we have seen our most productive folks have a niche. Maybe it's first-time home buyers. Maybe it's the condo king. Maybe it's luxury. But they have a niche, they have a specialty, and they promote that directly to their target market. Now, that doesn't mean they don't do other things, but they're very clear on their messages to their target market, and they're outperforming in some cases by 4 times the average.
And do you work with agents to try and help them identify a specialization that fits their background or strengths?
Their personality. We have some assessment tools and some talking points that help guide the agent. The agent has to make the ultimate decision, but we have some things that'll draw out of them their background. Maybe they're a prior nurse, right? Maybe they're a prior first responder. Maybe they're a teacher. Maybe they came from financial services. There could be some niches there, or police, that kind of thing. So we have some ways to kind of draw out of them what might be a specialty, but some of them you just got to get in there and you got to play the game. And after they play the game for a year or two, some of these niches and specialties start to naturally develop for them, and that's when they have their breakthrough.
Now, do you have, I'm assuming, different teams that are focused on, obviously you have a pretty broad geographic range that you cover, but within those geographies, certain teams that specialize in high end or some of those categories we just spoke about? And do you give young agents the opportunity to get exposure to a number of those different specializations and figure out which one's the best fit?
Yeah, it's funny. Texas is a big state. We have offices in El Paso, which is closer to Los Angeles than it is to Dallas, I think. El Paso is a 14-hour. If we were going to drive it, you and I were going to head to our office in El Paso. It's a 14-hour drive.
Don't want to do that. I've done that before.
Yeah, no, it's a big state, my friend. So yeah, we cover from Dallas all the way to El Paso. So if the question was, how do we help younger agents coming in, or not younger, but newer agents coming in to a specialty? One of the things that is very attractive about our culture, and those cultures that was in a study that Real Trends did of 14 firms. I don't know if you've seen this study. There was a study called Against All Odds 17 firms who performed more than any other firm in the country is being close to your agents. And we're close to our agents, and we have the most supportive culture that I've ever seen anywhere, where other agents are willing to help other agents. So if you're a newer associate in the firm and you're reaching out, particularly right now when people are so busy, our more experienced folks are reaching hands out and giving these folks opportunities and helping them learn the ropes and teach them and that kind of thing. So we have a very supportive, collaborative culture. Even though you think they're competing, it's very unique in terms of there's no shortage of help or someone willing to spend time with you. I had one of our agents call me the other day and said she just happened to call one of our other agents who spent 2 hours with her, helping her work through an issue. And she called me to say, I just can't believe that we have that supportive of a culture.
And that's one of the things you constantly hear companies preaching about is, teamwork, collaboration. And it's nice to say those catchphrases, but the reality of it is a lot of times it's not. And particularly in real estate, as you know, agents, especially within teams, competing against each other for deals and business. So you've obviously done something right. What is it about your culture that you've been able to create this collaborative environment in an industry where it's not always that way?
Well, I think there's 5 things. First of all, it's attracting and bringing in the right people. But I think there's 5 things. In one of our major markets, I recently looked at our broker metrics reports, and we were performing nearly 4 times better than the market average. That's a big win during a global pandemic, if you think about it, right? And it got me thinking, well, what's in our culture? How did our real estate associates do that? It wasn't me, right? Obviously, I've provided some leadership, but what's in our culture that made that type of result possible? And as I dug into it and I talked to our folks, I found 5 things. 1, we have a culture that done is better than perfect. 2, we have a culture that redirecting after accepting a mistake. 3, we're very focused. All of our training, all of our mentoring, everything we do is about focus. And our focus is on the money ball, which is the number of appointments, the number of new appointments that you make in your calendar each week. Then fun, and then a growth mindset. And I could dig into a little bit more of those. Let me do 2, and then we'll see if you want to dig into one of them. But the first one is done is better than perfect. And there's some psychologists that did a study recently of more than 40,000 people that showed that perfectionism has increased by 33% since 1989. We seem to be internalizing the myth that life should be perfect, when in fact, you and I know that's an impossible outcome. And the research shows those of us who become preoccupied with perfection set us up against unbelievable challenges. So we work on what I call keep moving forward, keep testing, keep trying, make a mistake and redirect after making a mistake. What do I mean by after you make a mistake? Now what? Well, recognize that the mistake happened and that sinking feeling, assess what happened and why, make it right. Make it right. That's where many of us go wrong. We don't make that mistake right. Adjust your systems, be kind to yourself, and move on. And so that's one of the 5.
Fascinating. I mean, I can certainly relate to perfectionism. There's plenty of times I've said it, wasted time reading over an email and either ended up not sending it or spending more time than I should have instead of just sending it after a quick one over and boom.
Yeah, done is better than perfect every day and twice on Sunday, right? Done is better than perfect.
So now Joe can't get mad at me if I send him some emails with spelling or grammatical errors.
Yeah.
Again, done is better than not receiving.
Done is better than perfect. And then the next one is really focus. Our human brains are programmed to narrow the concentration in the face of a threat, like we're going through with COVID and lockdowns and all the procedures that have changed. We're designed for protection. And the trap is that you start to narrow your focus. And sometimes you got to be situationally aware and look around what's happening around you.
Staying with the COVID, what changes have you had to make during the last few months?
Well, thanks to our founder JP, who founded the firm. The firm was founded 100% paperless. We've been paperless since 2011. We were never not paperless. I don't know if I'm saying that word the right way, right? So we've been paperless ever since the firm was founded. We don't have a printer. We have 27 offices in the corporate headquarters, and there's one printer in the entire organization. It happens to be in our accounting. Well, maybe there's two now. There's one in our accounting and one in our HR function. So one, we were built to be lean and to be paperless to start with. So our folks didn't have to adjust to paperless stuff. We were already paperless. What we did have to adjust to, and we were able to do it faster than most because we were already technologically advanced. We had to adjust, and are still adjusting to what I would call the virtual open house, the virtual walkthrough, doing Zooms like this with our clients and doing consults. That we spent some time on training development and best practices.
And do you foresee any changes going into 2021 now that we've sort of lived in this new reality? Any tweaks to the current process?
I think this is probably forever changed and has brought out inefficiencies, in our models, like mortgage loans that still require a wet signature, right? Just some crazy things that can be done more efficiently, and I think you're going to see that continue to innovate over the next several years. I'm not sure exactly of your question, but I think the skill we can all develop and get better at is the virtual walkthrough of a home and boosting that in a sense of virtual open house. NAR did some studies, and they did some studies of what develops trust, and what develops trust between us and the consumer is not what you think. The study showed that agents and brokerages who do drone photography on all of their listings, no matter what the price point, develop trust with the consumer more than those who didn't. And the other thing that developed trust was either if there was a virtual tour that it had annotations from the agent or the seller, built trust, or better yet, that it was a virtual walkthrough where the agent was walking through the property, that built trust. So I think those are things we all need to get command of and use in our marketing that aren't widely, even with COVID. Some are doing it, and some still are resisting.
Have you seen a shift in the consumers, the buyers, or the seller's expectation of their agent going through COVID?
Totally, yeah. The consumer expects more than the typical agent realizes. We just did a survey of 2,000 consumers, and they basically classified. Now, I'm not saying this to offend anybody, but the consumer classified agents into two buckets. And the one bucket was people who were just looking for a commission, and people who added value. And it was very clear, and it was very decisive from the consumer survey that there is a place, and a very valued place, for an agent who provides value, who understands the local market, who is what I call the hub of all things home services related in their local geography, versus someone who's just showing a home, opening a door. They actually call them door openers. They call that was the consumer would use. When I use this agent, it was a door opener. When I use that agent, they were a valued, trusted advisor. And it was as clear as parting the waters that there was two groups. So which group do you want to be part of? You want to be in the trusted advisor group, right? And consumers expect that today. And they see through it when you're not. And they see through it pretty quickly.
Hey,
in fact, the other brokers who are listening in would know this. Whenever our agents aren't adding value and they're just doing something to get a commission, that's when we have problems.
Well, and let's, I mean, you got a lot of good wisdoms. I just,
Oh
read your
yeah.
book, up in your business.
Hey, I know that guy. I know that guy that wrote that book.
Why did you write the book?
Up in Your Business, The Art of Productivity. That's my second book. I wrote another book called One Hell of a Move. They're both available on Amazon. I wrote them to kind of get out of my head some of the amazing things I've learned by working with amazing agents all over the world. Quite frankly, I've worked with agents all over the US and some in Europe and a few in Australia and New Zealand. And I wanted to get that out of my head and on a piece of paper. So my first book, One Hell of a Move, was me moving from Southern California to Texas to take this assignment. And I wrote that one about one hell of a move. And then this one is basically a collection. I write a blog every week. And this is a collection of the best blogs over the last 3 years.
And then if you could give us your opinion on what is the top 3 or 4 traits that make up a great agent that a young agent can look for to model after, what advice would you give?
Oh, I could talk for hours on that.
That would be a separate webinar, but maybe you can just do a teaser in a minute.
Yeah, I'll come back for one of those. PhD. And I don't mean the PhD after my master's degree. I'm talking about poor, hungry, and driven, right? What we've observed is those that have a clear purpose and a clear reason, and they've burned the boats, right? There's no going back. This is my career, and I'm going into this full steam ahead. And they have a purpose, they have a reason, and they know that they're making a difference. That's a key trait. Now, we make a difference. I don't know if most people realize this, but NAR did a study that shows for every 2 homes that we sell, 1 job is sustained in the local market. So I was sharing with my folks this morning that we've created or sustained 9,000 jobs. That's making the difference. And so that drives our behavior, because it's not just about selling a home. We want to earn money and make a commission and earn our salary, but many of us want to make a difference in the communities we serve. So having a purpose, being driven, being ambitious, having the discipline to execute on a day in and day out basis, serving the consumer, actually working from the consumer backwards, right? What does the consumer need? How can I serve their needs in this pandemic, right? I have to be more efficient. I have to be clear, concise. I have to be able to have a command of technology like we're using now on Zoom. Consumer driven. I would say what we started with: solve a problem for a profit. Solve a problem for a profit. What are your consumers' biggest problems? Finding a home, making the transaction stress-free, moving in and moving out. All of those are challenges that if you help make that easier, you become the trusted advisor versus just a salesman.
So going back to providing value, obviously providing value, you need to identify a problem. What's your process for working with agents to help them better understand the client so that they can provide more value and increase their reputation in business?
Yeah, surveys. We do a lot of surveys. And the research shows you really only need to ask 4 questions. What are we doing well? What could we do better? Would you recommend us? And anything else you want to tell us. So we're always constantly surveying with those 4 questions. What do we do well? What could we do better? Would you recommend us? And if not, why not? And and then anything else you could tell us. So from those 4 questions, we learned so much, and we can deliver. And so we do that both on the consumer side and the agent side. Now, our brand is to the agent, and the agent's brand is to the consumer. So we spend most of our time on, how do we adjust our systems to serve the agent, and then we encourage the agent to spend their time on, how they can serve the consumer. We do that through tools like Transaction Desk that has seamless processing and transaction coordination where there's file sharing and those kind of things. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that's what came to mind.
No, that's exactly it. That's very helpful. And backtracking a little bit, you mentioned when we were talking about some of the things that an agent can do that are the most important to them being successful, and you brought up a KPI, which was booking meetings? Is that the most important action item that they can do?
Absolutely. I can look at if I don't know if our audience here is real estate agents or broker owners or managers, but if there's real estate professionals, I'm going to scare you here for a minute. I can predict the success of your business right now with one metric. I want you to open your calendar. I want you to open the calendar and tell me how many booked appointments you have in your calendar for the week or for the next 2 weeks. No appointments, no money, right? One of my favorite movies, guys, of the world is Moneyball. I don't know if you remember Moneyball with Brad Pitt, and it was about the Oakland A's, who were the worst team in baseball. They figured out that winning games was getting on first base. They started hiring, instead of people who hit home runs, they started hiring people that got on first base. They went from worst to first, went to the World Series. They didn't win the World Series, but they went from worst to first. They were a laughing stock at the beginning, and now they changed the entire game of baseball. Well, real estate sales is just like the Moneyball. The number one metric is more appointments. The whole purpose of your marketing, the whole purpose of everything you do is to gain a new appointment. You see, when I was with consumer packaged goods, that was selling a product. Here we're selling a professional service. And most of us try and sell a professional service as a product, and it doesn't work. This is a direct response marketing game, and the response you want to get is an appointment. And so I would encourage all of you to go back through and look at your marketing, and is it designed to generate a new appointment? And if it's not, I would redo it, because appointments is the leading indicator of the success of your business. I don't care what firm you work with, what brand you're part of. Appointments is the money ball.
Now,
Yeah,
how
Lloyd,
is that?
that's one of those drop the mic exits there.
Get on base, or in the movie, get on first base.
Do you encourage beyond marketing agents to go out and network, look for referrals, that type of thing? Or do you mainly advise them to just focus on marketing and trying to bring in appointments that way?
Oh, no. And it depends on your part of career. So remember, I think one of our struggles with the industry is everybody wants to do everything at once, right? And there is a progression. I mean, most of us started in kindergarten, then we went to first grade, and then we went to second grade, right? We went to third. There is a progression. If you try and do all of this at once, typically it's going to fail. But over time, we need to get 4 to 8 to 10 different lead sources, and certainly out of area networking, other agents, and marketing in key cities. Like in Dallas here, we have a number of agents who market into Illinois, Southern California, and New York, because that's one of the major geographies incoming. So they're doing it both consumer marketing and agent-agent referral marketing. This is a piece that I got on my door just the other day. If this was on your door, would you turn it over and look at it?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, most of the door hangers I see, I would never turn over. This one did, and then on the back of it, it said, "Have you had any thoughts of selling? Curious about the new value of your home? Go to my website." And it has a website, and I could go check the value of my home, and then it just says, "Let's talk." And it had a phone number and a way to get a hold of her. I thought it was brilliant.
Very creative.
Yeah, you see, and sometimes I think we overcomplicate our marketing, right? This is like how simple is this? But it got my attention. I mean, normally I'd take this stuff and throw it away. This one I actually picked up and looked at. So I think simplify your message, be very clear. This one was very clear. Have you had any thoughts of selling? Well, I'm either going to say yes or no, right? So, but if I had, guess who I'm going to call? I would call this agent. Yeah.
How has the marketing approach changed because of COVID?
Oh, I think it's dramatically changed. Agents who have not picked up on virtual tours, drone photography, virtual open houses where you walk through and narrate a home virtually. If you haven't mastered those, you're already behind. the virtual open house, boosted through Facebook and other things, is getting more traffic than physical open houses and is generating more leads and has more legs. And the consumer is now expecting not just the physical open house, but the virtual open house. And if you're not into the virtual open house, you're not going to be competitive in some cases.
For argument's sake, let's say things went back to normal tomorrow. Do you think the virtual open house is here to stay, just from a efficiency standpoint? Because I know lots of people, it's time consuming to look at a bunch of houses. You have to drive around, ruin your weekend, and spend time with the real estate agent. So
I think they're here to stay, and I don't know if it's the efficiency part, but it's the reach. It's the reach. So just like in every other market, the bar gets raised. Before we did physical open houses. Now we're going to have to do the physical open house with the virtual. And when you put those two together, your reach is exponential. And so I do believe that moving forward, if you don't do both, you will not be as competitive. Another agent will present to the listing that they do both, and they'll get the listing over you, if all other things being equal, for the savvy consumer. Assuming they're not your mother, father, brother, aunt, or uncle or somebody, right? But a savvy consumer, that would be a point of differentiation that today's modern consumer is going to pick up on.
Gotcha. And then real estate's always been a relationship and trust-based business, and a lot of that happens through meeting in person. This is a question I always ask our guests, just because I get different answers and I find it fascinating. How are you coaching your agents to develop those relationships? To meet someone over Zoom for the first time is a bit awkward. We're all sort of used to it, but what sort of tips and advice do you give them?
Yeah, I look, one of the things that we get to do is we've been created to place a meaning. We can place a meaning and definition on anything we want. So you could place a meaning on this, that this is hard to get to know people, or you can change it and say, this is the best way to get to know people. I choose to say this is one of the best ways to get to know people. You and I just met through this. And if I was following our system, over the next 8 weeks, you would get a handwritten personal note from me once a week for the next 8 weeks. Hey, William, thanks for having me on the podcast. I had such fun. And then the following week, hey, I was just looking at the podcast. We had over 5,000 views and all these comments. So you and I could build a relationship by having a meeting like this, doing a consult. I can write some handwritten personal notes, send you a text, send you an email, check in. And it's all between your two ears, right? In some cases, I think we're putting too much stock. Obviously, I'm not advocating we don't ever meet physically, but don't let that be a barrier. I got a birthday Friday. Someone I just met just wrote me a handwritten birthday card, said, hey, I know we haven't been able to see each other for many months, but just wanted to stop and say, thank you, that kind of stuff. Right. So
your birthday's on the 4th. So I was going to save it for the end, but happy birthday.
Oh, there you go. Thank you. So, I mean, I didn't say that because of my birthday. I'm just saying, they're
good lead.
Yeah, all of those same fundamentals, handwritten notes, pop-bys, a text that, hey, I'm just thinking of you. Me after this, hey guys, thanks for having me on your podcast. I really enjoyed it. And then following up, all of those fundamentals haven't changed. Now, how we may do it changed. Like you and I aren't going to be able to physically meet, who knows, maybe till June. But I'm not going to let that stop me from building a relationship with folks that I know I can help serve and help provide a solution for.
So I got to ask you, you brought up something interesting, the handwritten note. And that was something when I was coming out of college, you're going through training for interviews and stuff, that was sort of the standard practice. And I'm not that old. And it seems like now that's a lost art. And you're one of the few people I've heard that actually still does that. So could you expand on that a bit? And is that something you encourage all your agents to do?
Absolutely. We are big note writers. So let me tell you an example. I wrote one of these. I have some just branded cards, with my name on it. And I wrote someone a note And I did happen to be in their office the other day, and they had that note pinned up next to their desk. I mean, why? Because we just don't get them anymore, right? And I just went and got our mail a little while ago, and it's all full of just junk. My mail goes from the mailbox to the trash can. So when you get something like this, it's special. And for that person, it made a difference. It made an impact, particularly if they're personalized and you say something unique. One of our top agents in the firm follows religiously the Brian Buffini touch system and does handwritten notes. I think 5 handwritten notes a day, every day of her life. She does 5 handwritten notes that are not just some verbatim script. In many cases, they're personal notes. Hey, I saw on Facebook that you were sick, you had the flu. I saw you graduated from college. She's aware enough that she can do a little bit of personal twist to it, and it works.
Yeah, very, very fascinating. Seems to be a lost art, but a very effective one that not enough people are taking advantage of.
If it's genuine.
Sure.
See, the whole thing across all of this, no matter what you do, is genuine, authentic, and transparent. If it's genuine, authentic, and transparent, and it's truly you, like if I was here faking it, you would know, well, he's a fake, right? People can see through authenticity genuinely. And so you've got to be you. And so we spend a lot of time trying to help agents find what's uniquely them that's going to set them apart.
So the final question I have to ask you, we ask everyone, is what do you see in store for the market, the housing market in the next year? We seem to keep, chugging along. Low interest rates are helping that. But if we see a slowdown in the economy, even with a housing shortage at the moment, how do you think that plays out?
So a couple of things. And I'm going to go beyond next year. I just read a stat that over the next 20 years, 21 million homes are going to be transferred from baby boomers to the next generations. That's a lot of inventory that's going to transfer. As the baby boomers, I think it is 1,000. Is it 1,000 people a day? 1,000 people a day in America are turning 65.
Wow.
So some number like that. So there's going to be a big transfer of those homes that are now, in their parents' possession is going to be transferred to the younger generation. So 10 to 20 years, we have that. Now going into the next 3 years, I just looked at some stats from the MBA, the Mortgage Affiliate Association, and they're projecting that through 2023 that mortgage rates are going to stay below 4%. And we heard that the Fed is going to keep rates artificially low through that period as well. So that is that's the most certainty I've ever seen, the most long-term certainty around one of the big drivers, which is mortgage rates, that I've ever seen ever. Now, what's going to happen after that? Maybe some hyperinflation in 2024 and 2025. We'll see about that. But the next 3 years, I think we've got a lot of opportunity. One of the biggest questions I get is, mortgage forbearance is going to potentially come to an end here in April. And I've got some very interesting stats about that are showing it's not going to be an issue. That there's enough demand to make up that absorption. About 500,000 people in America have paid off their mortgage. And those that are getting some forgiveness are current and getting back into current payments. So I think 2021, I'm very bullish. I know Lawrence Yun from NAR just posted some stats that he's very bullish. The one concern that I do have would be commercial, on the commercial real estate side. I think there's going to be some fundamental long-term changes that are happening there over the next few years.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you joining us today. Joe, can I get you to hold up Mark's book one more time?
Well, there we go. I've never had this done before.
I want to thank you. You've been great, and we look forward to having you on, first part of next year as well. There's some other topics I think we can cover off with you. But
Yeah,
William, you asked?
Yeah, on Amazon. I'd love to come back. This was a blast. I enjoyed it. I don't know how many people we have or whatever, but feel free to follow me on Instagram or Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. Let's get connected. And if I can ever be of help or assistance to any of you, I'd love to do that. Love to come back on the show.
Go out and buy Mark's book, and if you don't like it, Joe will personally reimburse you. I'll send out.
I'll give you the discount on a property product. Double the discount if you didn't like his book.
There you go.
I'm confident you will. Well, at least I am liking it.
Thanks again, Mark. We'll definitely have you back. This was a lot of fun. For those tuning in, our colleague Veli is about to take over, share some updates, and give a preview of the platform. So thanks, Joe. Thanks, Mark.